Hare Krishna. So today we welcome all of you on this 8th session of our Gita Essence series. In this Gita Essence series, today we are going to discuss chapter 8 of Bhagavad Gita, which is about attaining the Supreme. So today Madan Sundar Das ji gonna tell us or gonna give his discourse about the attaining the Supreme.
Why
So
there's a little
now I request His Grace Madan Sundar Das take over the session and take us towards the journey of attaining the Supreme. Hare Krishna. We welcome all our participants, all our kids, all our uncles and aunties, all devotees and friends. Over to you, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna. Thank you. We welcome everyone for today's evening program. We'll start with the prayers. Om Agyan Timirandasya Dhyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Namah Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Pashatai Deshatarine Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaur Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna. So thank you once again for joining for our Gita Essence program, which is based on the teachings of His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. So we'll be starting with chapter 8, but before that, as usual, we generally give a recap of a previous chapter to help you understand the connection between the previous and the current chapter which we're about to discuss. So in chapter 7, we saw how Lord Shri Krishna began to speak, and he spoke on how do we understand the science of the Supreme Lord. Krishna said, Tat Shanu. By hearing, one understands the Supreme Absolute Truth. Hearing from whom? Hearing from the Supreme Lord directly, or from the bona fide representative of the Supreme Lord. So, like that, Lord Shri Krishna begins a chapter. And then Arjuna asked, My dear Lord, although I believe you exist, Arjuna pondered effectively. My dear Lord, although I know you exist, still there are some people who say, we will believe when you show us God. When we get to see God, only then we'll believe. How do I answer such a question? Then Lord Shri Krishna says, Arjuna, I am present everywhere. It's quite surprising that people don't know me. And then Krishna says, Bhumirapo nalo vayu kammano buddhirevacha ahankara ityame bhinna prakritir ashtada. 7th chapter, verse number 4, Krishna says, earth, water, fire, air, ether, which forms, it's an element which forms our body and everything in this creation that we see around, and the subtle body within this body called as made up of mind, intelligence, false ego. Krishna says, these are all my energies. It all belongs to me. And one who knows the science at all times can experience the presence of I, refers to Lord Shri Krishna. Then Lord Shri Krishna says, Arjuna, there is more to this knowledge. Higher or superior to this dead matter, there is a superior energy called as Jivatma. Within this body, there is a Atma, which is a superior energy, and which that living entity in this material world is trying to exploit the material energy to create different manifestation. Like this, Lord Shri Krishna speaks, and finally conclude, the question of "Can you show me God?" Where Krishna says, Arjuna, there is no truth superior to I in 7th chapter 7 verse. Mataha parataram nanyat kinchidasti dhananjaya Mai sarvam midam protam sutre manigana iva. I am the binding force of this whole creation. I am the superior truth. I am the supreme most truth in this whole creation. Nothing is superior to I. That Arjuna pondered. Arjuna thought, my dear Lord, if you exist and you are present everywhere, then why there is a wholesale denial of your existence? Lord Shri Krishna smiles and he says, Arjuna, everyone is deluded by my magic spell. And what is that magic spell? Lord Shri Krishna speaks in the 13th verse. Every living entity, as soon as is born into this world, comes out of the womb of his mother or her mother, is covered over by the modes of material nature, sattva, raja, tamagun. Just like every morning there is a sunrise, but on a particular day called as rainy day or rainy cloud, when the rainy cloud comes in between our vision and that of the sun, we fail to see sun. It doesn't mean sun does not exist. Sun always existed. Sun had risen up. But because now the rainy clouds are interfering with our vision of the sun, an ignorant person may think sun does not exist. Krishna says similarly, I cover the intelligence of all the living entity. Although I am present everywhere, within the living and the non-living, yet the person does not see me. Arjuna is frightened. Arjuna said, my dear Lord, what hope do we have? How do we get rid of this deluding energy of yours? Krishna said, aha, now you have asked a meaningful question, Arjuna. And then Krishna speaks one of the classic verses, 14th verse of 7th chapter. Devi yesh gunamai mamamaya duratya mamevaye prapadyante maya metam taranti te. Just like if you visit someone's house and if he has a dog, as soon as he approaches the gate of that person, the dog begins to bark. Yes or no? The dog is barking, and how much ever you try to shoo away the dog doesn't go away. In fact, he howls, he barks more louder. But as soon as the master comes and he says, hut, the dog puts his tail behind between his hind legs and goes inside the house. Similarly, Krishna says, Devi Eshagunamai, this divine energy of mine is very, very powerful and impossible for anyone to overcome, except for one who takes my shelter. One who takes my shelter can easily cross over this deluding energy. And then Krishna says, Arjuna, but who can take my shelter? One who is pious. Impious person can never take my shelter. And Krishna says about this kind of a person, there are 4 kinds of people who cannot take shelter, is described in the 15th verse of the 7th chapter, where Krishna says, Namam dushkritano mudha prapadante naradama maya aparat jnana asuram bhavimashita. 4 kinds of people, mudha, foolish, hard-working asses, have nothing else as their goal of life, just to make money and enjoy or gratify their senses. Naradama, lower than the lowest, which means they break all the religious principles. They're not even called as humans. They live on an animalistic platform. Maya aparat jnana refers to the scholars and intelligentsia class of the society who, rather than using the God-given intelligence in creating a facility for people to understand Lord, are misusing the intelligence in forgetting the God or forgetting about the Lord by trying to make comfortable living within this artificial or temporary body. And finally, Asuram, one who declares himself to be God. Second, who denies the existence of the God. And third, one who says everything has come by chance. Krishna says, are of asuram nature. And then there are four kinds of living entities who Krishna calls as pious living entity. They come and take my shelter. When they are in distress, when they are in need of financial help, when they are inquisitive in their life, and one who knows who I am and he wants to serve me, means Jnani. These four kinds of people come to me, and finally Krishna says, Arjuna, whatever it is, at the end of the day, to know about me is very, very rare. And Krishna says in 19th verse, Bahunam Janmanam Ante Jnanavan Ma Prapatyate Vasudeva Sarvamiti Samahatma Sadurlava. One who knows that Vasudeva Sarvamiti is the cause of all causes, Lord Vasudev, such a person is very, very rare. Such a Mahatma, Sudurlabha, very rare. Then Krishna pauses. And then Arjuna ponders, my dear Lord, you have been speaking about yourself, those who take your shelter, who do not take your shelter. What about devatas? And then the last 10 verses, starting from 21st verse up to 30th verse almost, 28th verse precisely, Lord Krishna talks about his relationship with devatas, which we discussed in details yesterday. Now, in the last two verses of 7th chapter, Krishna speaks something which almost bewilders Arjuna. And Krishna says in 29th verse, Jara marana mokshaya mamashritya tantite. Jara marana means one who wants to get moksha from old age and from death. Mamashritya yatantite, they should take my shelter. Te brahma tad vidhu krishnam adhyatma karma chakilam. Such a person is said to be Brahman. Adhyatma karma chakilam. Like this, Krishna uses some technical words, Brahma, Adhyatma, Karma, and then he goes on, Sadhi bhutadi daivam mam, Sadhi yaknam chaye vidhu, prayana kale pichmam, te vidur yukta chetasaha. And Krishna speaks in the 30th verse, Hey Arjuna, those in full conscious of me, who know me to be the Supreme Lord, the governing principle of material manifestation, devatas, and of all sacrifices. One who knows me can understand, know me, the Supreme Personality Godhead, even at the time of death. Now, Arjuna was a little confused because Krishna here have used 6 technical terms, and Arjuna needs more clarification. Therein, the 8th chapter of Bhagavad Gita begins with Arjuna inquiring about, my dear Lord, what did you just say? I didn't understand this. And that's how the chapter 8 begins, with a question by Arjuna, wherein he asks about this terminology that Lord Shri Krishna just spoke in the last 2 verses of the 7th chapter. It's a dialogue, so there cannot be an interruption. There has to be a flow, and this is the flow that goes on. So chapter 8, very, very important and a beautiful chapter, titled as Attaining the Supreme, which refers to how to go back to Godhead after this lifetime, how to pass the final examination. So this chapter discusses the inevitable reality, which everyone has to face it, but nobody wants to discuss it or talk about it. And what is that? It's called as death. Bhagavad Gita, particularly chapter 8, outlines such unavoidable predicaments like birth, death, old age, and disease. Not the 8th chapter, the 13th chapter describes about these 4 things. The 8th chapter gives a summary of it. So it describes these 4 kinds of problems that every living entity faces in this world. And here in this chapter, Lord Shri Krishna elaborately speaks on the subject matter of death. Death is an exam that nobody can skip it. Nobody can avoid it. Similarly, for a spiritualist, whereas for a materialist or a worldly minded person, the subject matter of death is discouraging and is distracting. Whereas the subject matter of death for a spiritualist is not a depressing thought, since his concept of life and death and its purpose is much broader. For one who is born, death is certain. For one who dies, birth is around the corner. Lord Shri Krishna already said this in the 2nd chapter, verse number 27. Therefore, this very important chapter of Bhagavad Gita shares wisdom on how to transcend death or to gain victory over death. In other words, death is not the end. Death, for spiritualists, is the beginning of an eternal life. For an atheist, could be an end of his current life. However, as the truth goes, he again or she again is forced to take birth again. We'll speak about the subject matter more in details. Let's quickly define the acronym for this chapter 8, which is DEAD, death. Let's begin with doubt. Where D stands for doubt, another chapter, another set of questions. Lord Shri Krishna at any time, never at any time discourages Arjuna from asking questions. And here again, Arjuna asked quite a few questions. And here, Arjuna have asked the following questions. I'm just going to show it on your screen. This is what he asked in verse number 1 and 2. What is Brahman, Adhyatma, Karma, Adibhut, Adidaiva? Who is Adiyagya? Where does he reside? And what happens to those who engage in devotional service? How do they know Krishna at the time of death? So Lord Shri Krishna in verse number 3rd and 4th very quickly gives the answer of the first 7 subjects, which is, Krishna says, Brahman is the indestructible living entity. Adhyatma is one's eternal nature, that is to serve. I may sound going a little quickly. Of course, I'm a little quick with this because Lord Shri Krishna himself doesn't go in details. We have already discussed the subject matter. Brahman, we have already discussed in the 2nd chapter. The nature, the spirit, soul. So I'm just giving you the answer that Krishna gives here. Krishna also doesn't go in details in this particular chapter. Karma, we have already discussed. Adhibhuta is the material world, which we're going to discuss in this chapter also. We'll speak about it in a short while. And then Adhidevata. Adhidevata means the father of all father. In Hindi movie, one very famous and old movie, there was a dialogue. रिश्ते में तो तुम्हारे बाप लगते हैं, नाम है शहंशाह. This is another way of definition of Adhidevata, Sarvaloka Maheshwaram, who's the father or the supreme of all. Adhidayagya refers to, 5th chapter, 29th verse, Bhoktaram, Yaganatapasam. So I have given those Sanskrit references which are given in Bhagavad Gita itself. Krishna is the super soul, the Lord of all sacrifices. Finally, where does he reside? Krishna says, Ishvara Sarva Bhutana. Ishvara, or this Krishna, resides as Paramatma in the hearts of every living entity. And finally, the 8th question is, how can one attain a spiritual destination at the time of death? This 8th and the final question, Prayena Kale, becomes the subject matter for the rest of the chapter. And it's indeed the most important subject matter which we should be hearing again and again. So, end of life. Generally, as I said, nobody wants to hear about it. Nobody wants to talk about it. Death, somehow the people feel is to be a discouraging subject. To give you an example, why people feel it to be discouraging. Tell me yes or no after I give this example to you. Imagine you've gone to watch a movie in a theater. You are standing at an entry gate. Now you can only take an entry to the theater when the people exit out. The exit gate opens and people begins to come out. Unless everyone has left, you're not allowed to go, as far as I understand. I could be wrong a little bit, that's a different story. Now the people who are coming out, and that one person who comes out specifically is known to you, is a friend of yours. As soon as you look towards the entry line or entry queue, he sees you standing. He comes running to you, he hugs you, says, my dear friend, long time no see. So glad I saw you. And then he says, oh, you are lined up for watching this movie? My goodness, what a thriller movie. What a fantastic and adventurous movie. What should I tell you? Let me tell you what happened, how the hero killed the heroine. Then the brother of the heroine became the victim. And actually the movie tells in the end, the hero was not the villain. Someone else was the villain. You say, wait a second, man. I paid $100 to watch this movie. Don't spoil the movie of my life. Yes or no? Would you say, don't reveal the thrill. Don't tell me how the movie ends. Yes or no? That's the reason. That's the reason why people with worldly mindedness and consciousness, they don't want to be reminded Whatever you are doing is futile, because at the end of the day, when you die, my dear friend, you came empty-handed, and you will leave this world empty-handed. We want to live our life thinking as if there is no end. We want to keep the mystery as a mystery. The point is, there is no mystery in anyone's life, because death is as sure. There's a saying, as sure as death in English. And that's the whole reason. That's the reason, just like people don't want to spoil the movie, similarly, people in general do not want to spoil the movie of their life. That's the whole point. Why people do not want to hear on this subject matter. So I already established that for a spiritualist is a subject matter which he is worth hearing again, because he knows death is a stepping stone for a life of eternity full of joy and bliss. So in this particular section, Lord Shri Krishna is going to speak about how our thoughts at the end, when we're quitting our body, determines our next destination. And to help you understand this concept, which we're just going to tell you in a short while, let me give you a real life story. I had quoted the story before for our Gita wisdom students. I may repeat it, considering Kali Yuga memory is short-lived. Some of you might have forgotten, and many could be new students. It's a story of Mr. Prakash, who lived in San Diego, California, America. His wife, over a period of time, got connected to Hare Krishna devotees, or Krishna's devotees, read Bhagavad Gita, became a devotee. She began to follow the principles of bhakti life, began to visit temple, because the wife would come to temple, the husband would come to drop the wife, but he would never ever attend any program. He would come, drop the wife, go away, and then come back only to pick her up. The wife was worried. Wife prayed hard to the Lord. My dear Lord, please help my husband become a devotee. Our life would be so beautiful together. Wife requested the devotees to help her husband, but nothing worked out. Ultimately, death is inevitable. And one day, this person got a heart attack and he fainted, fell on the ground. Wife was sobbing, took her husband to the hospital. And then suddenly, before anything had happened, the husband went into the state of coma. The wife lost all her hope. She called the temple president of ISKCON San Diego, Badrinarayan Prabhu then. And then the wife said, my dear Prabhu, please, you have to pray to the deities. And I request you, please visit my husband in the hospital. Please chant Hare Krishna for him. So at least his next destination, there is some hope for him in the next destination. So Badrinath Prabhu obliged. She was a sincere devotee, and he felt this is his duty to serve her. And Badrinath Prabhu began to visit the husband, Mr. Prakash, every week. He went almost for 4 weeks, and the 5th week, suddenly in the morning around 9 a.m. on Monday morning, the phone rang of Badrinath Prabhu. He picked up the phone, and there was this Mataji, the wife of Mr. Prakash, Mrs. Prakash. With a very frantic voice, she said, Prabhu, you need to come urgently. It's an emergency. Please come fast. And Mr. Badrinath was confused. What happened? He got into the vehicle. He ran to the hospital, came to the ward. And as soon as he entered, the man, Mr. Prakash, had come out of his coma. And as soon as Mr. Prakash saw Badrinath entering, he immediately sat on his bed, the hospital bed. And with his hands indicating for Badrinath to come forward, he clasped the hand of Badrinath Prabhu, and with eyes filled with tears, he said, 4 times they came, 4 times they came. So Badrinath Prabhu thought, oh, he's talking about him. Badrinath Prabhu said, yeah, I guess I came 4 to 5 times. Mr. Prakash said, no, 4 times they came, 4 times. And the wife and the kids were there. The third husband has got some aftershock because of coma, so he forgot that his family was always there. The wife said, no, we were there, always there for you. The wife again shrugged, or the husband again shrugged. No, 4 times they came, 4 times. The nurse was standing there. The nurse said, actually, we saved Mr. Prakash from dying 4 times. We almost lost him, and 4 times we brought him back to the life, or we saved his life, whatever way. That's the time Badrinath Prabhu understood what he saw 4 times. And then Badrinath Prabhu said, did you see those divine-looking personalities with 4 arms, holding a club, conch, lotus, and disc? They had a crown, they had a yellow colored dhoti, a blue complexion, a lotus-like eyes, a beautiful garland on the neck, and Badrinath gave a description. And immediately the Mr. Prakash said, "No, no, they did not came. The ghostly, the horrible looking creatures came. They had a very weird face, horrible looking. They were holding a big chains in their in their right hand, and they had a club in their left hand. They looked so scary. And as soon as they came, when they were about to take me away, I said, I am fully dependent on Krishna." As soon as they heard the name of Krishna, they immediately left me. Again, they came. When they were about to take me, I said, I have decided to dedicate my life for Krishna. Again, they left. Third time they came, again I said that, and the fourth time, they did not came. Fourth time, the divine one came who you just described. They came, and then suddenly this ghostly, horrible looking creatures came. And when they came and they saw the divine beings, they folded their hands, offered their respects to them, and said, "Oh, this man is now no more under our control." They said like this and they disappeared. And after that, those divine looking beings disappeared, and I came out of the state of coma. With tears dripping down his cheeks now, holding or clasping the hands of Badrinath, he said, "Prabhu, I promise you, when I get discharged, I am not going back my home." Badrinath was surprised. "What do you mean?" He said, "I am coming straight to the temple, and now you tell me whatever service I can do for the Lord. You enroll me for the Bhagavad Gita program. I am starting chanting Hare Krishna. I am doing everything." And this happened almost 10 years ago. If any one of you visit California, San Diego, you can go and visit the temple there. And if you see a man who's 60 plus year old doing Aarti on the altar, that is Mr. Prakash, who now have become an initiated devotee. You can go and meet him and ask him the description of the divine and the ghostly beings. He will tell you more about it. It's a true story. This is not the only story. There are hundreds of stories like this. And see what Krishna says in the 5th verse of 8th chapter. Antakale cha mameva smaranmuktu kalevaram yat prayati samadbhavam yati nasti atra samshayam. Krishna says, whoever at the end of his life quits his body remembering me, alone at once attains me, attains my nature. Of this there is no doubt. Lord Shri Krishna says, Antakale, when he is giving or quitting his life, Smaran Muktva Kalevaran, giving up his body if he remembers me, Yaprayati Samadbhavam, he attains to my nature. And last line of this, there is no doubt, Arjuna. You should not have any doubt on this. And then there is a beautiful purport that Srila Prabhupada writes. Is our host there? If our host would like to read,
Yes,
she can read out the purport by Srila Prabhupada.
Yes, Prabhuji. I'm gonna read the English one. Prabhuji, could you just confirm the verse number, chapter 8?
Can you read from the screen? Because there's only a section that I have used.
Okay, Prabhuji. Yes, Prabhuji. In this verse, the importance of Krishna consciousness is stressed. Anyone who quits his body in Krishna consciousness is at once transferred to the transcendental nature of the Supreme Lord. The Supreme Lord is the purest of the pure. Therefore, anyone who is constantly Krishna conscious is also the purest of the pure. The word smaran, remembering, is important. Remembrance of Krishna is not possible for the impure soul who has not practiced Krishna consciousness in devotional service. Hare Krishna.
And Prabhupada says further ahead. Please read.
Therefore, one should practice Krishna consciousness from the very beginning of life. If one wants to achieve success at the end of his life, the process of remembering Krishna is essential. Therefore, one should constantly, incessantly chant the Mahamantra.
So let us together do that. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Prabhupada very categorically writes, one should practice Krishna consciousness from the beginning of life if one wants to achieve success at the end of life. Because what is end of life, we don't know. Because death is a surprise exam. Can happen to anyone at any point of time. We should be always prepared for it. Next, in the sixth verse, Krishna describes the general law of transmigration. And Krishna says, Yam yavapi smaran bhavam tayajatayante kalevaram tam tam eveti kaunteya sadatad bhava bhavitaha. Whatever state, yam yam vapi smaran, whatever state, whatever you remember, tayajate, while giving away, ante kalevaram means body, tam tam evaiti kaunteya sadatad bhava bhavita. That state of existence, what you will attain, the state of existence is what you're going to attain in the next life. Is that clear? Whatever you remember, whatever you think, whatever your consciousness is absorbed in at the end of life is what you're going to attain. And look what Srila Prabhupada writes in the purport, something very beautiful. Our host may read it.
Yes, Prabhuji. Of course, one's thoughts during the course of one's life accumulate to influence one's thoughts at the moment of death. So, this life creates one's next life. If in one's present life, one lives in the mode of goodness and always thinks of Krishna, it is possible for one to remember Krishna at the end of one's life. That will help one be transferred to the transcendental nature of Krishna. If one is transcendently absorbed in Krishna's service, then his next body will be transcendental, spiritual, not material. Therefore, the chanting of
Once again, together, Hare Krishna, Hare
Hare Krishna,
Krishna, Krishna
Krishna
Krishna,
Krishna,
Hare
Hare
Hare,
Hare,
Hare
Hare
Ram,
Rama,
Hare
Hare
Ram,
Rama,
Rama Rama,
Rama, Hare
Hare Hare.
Hare is the best process for successfully changing one's state of being at the end of one's life.
Srila Prabhupada quoted the example of Bharat Maharaj in the purport. Bharat Maharaj, the great king, decided to renounce everything so that he can go back to God and he could attain perfection in his yoga. However, before departing from this world, he became attached to deer. And while quitting his body, he remembered the deer. Therefore, in his next life, he became deer. Now, so here is my question to all of you. A lot of people today have dogs with them, and they love their dogs so dearly. You know, they have a big photos of dogs in their house and whatnot. Sometimes people love dogs even more than their own family members. Very interesting. Once Prabhupada was giving a lecture, and Prabhupada said, God, Krishna is God. And one who does not believe in Krishna being God, they are called as DOG, dog. I know the reverse of God is dog, if you see, isn't it? God and refers as dog. So my question to all of you is, imagine somebody who has developed so much attachment to the dog, and while departing from this world, his dog is looking at him or her, and the master is looking at the dog. Oh, my Tommy, I'll miss you in my next life. What do you think is going to happen to the master or the Mr. or Mrs. in the next life? What do you think the person is going to become in the next life? Yam yam vapi smaran bhavam tayateyante kalevaram. So next life for this person would be of dog. So one has to be very careful whom we are developing attachment or attraction. So how do we remember Krishna at the end of life? How to remember Krishna? Srila Prabhupada gives 3 key points which I have summed up as follows here. Please read the purport which we read. So these are the 3 points. First, practice sadhana throughout life. What is sadhana? The chanting of the holy names of the Lord. Following regulative principles, that is, live a pure life. And finally, whatever attachment we have cultivated through our life is what a person remembers at the end of life. If somebody is too attached to money, he would be in so much anxiety at the end of life. Think for yourself. If somebody is too attached to his money, what would be his state of consciousness? Now he knows that he cannot take his money away with him. He has to leave it behind. And the people who he's leaving behind, if he doesn't have too much faith, doesn't have much love and affection for him, think about what a disgust he would feel. What did I do for the rest of my life? I worked so hard. I can't take my money with me. I loved my Mercedes Benz. I loved my 5 BHK and whatnot. I have to leave everything behind. So at death, we remember attachments, whatever we cultivate. So at this point in time, Arjuna began to think, Arey Baba, I have to fight. I have to fight with Duryodhan, Karna. And Krishna says, whatever you do in your life is what you remember at the end of your life. If I engage this in the war, you're fighting. It's a matter of life and death. How much your mind will be absorbed in the thoughts of your enemy? Arjuna thought, if that's the case, my dear, it's very dangerous. If at the end of life, if I remember Duryodhan, Shakuni, Karna, next life is doomed. So Arjuna again did the reverse gear. And he said, my dear Lord, it is better for me to quit the war. Krishna said, Beta, tu kahin nahi ja raha, tu yudhi ladega. And let me tell you the trick of the game. And then Krishna speaks the 7th verse. Very important verse for all of us who always wonder how to remain Krishna conscious at all times. Krishna says, Tasmat sarveshu kaleshu mamanusmara yudhyacha. Tasmat, therefore, sarveshu at all, kaleshu times, at all times, mam, me, anusmara, remember, and yudhya cha. For you, cooking cha. For you, job cha. For you, whatever you do, where you want to, you're struggling to remember Krishna. For you, education cha. Because I see some students also. So wherever, whatever is your struggle of life, similarly, Arjuna had to struggle is yudhya cha, fight. Krishna said, mam anusmara, not mam smara. Pay attention to the Sanskrit. Krishna could have said mam smarano yudhyacha. Smara means remember, but Krishna says anusmara. Anusmara means anu means to follow. Follow the predecessor. Arjuna, remember me as your predecessors did. Follow the footsteps of the previous acharyas. In that way, you remember. Mayar pitam anubuddhir mame vashyasiya samshaya. Like this, you will not get contaminated or affected by the things of this world. Very interesting purport. Prabhupada describes or gives more details to it. Please read.
Ji Prabhuji. This instruction to Arjuna is very important for all men engaged in material activities. The Lord does not say that one should give up his prescribed duties or engagements. One can continue them and at the same time think of Krishna by chanting Hare Krishna. This will free one from material contamination and engage the mind and intelligence in Krishna. By chanting Krishna's name, one will be transferred to the supreme planet, Krishna Loka, without a doubt.
Once again, Prabhupada brings out the importance of chanting the holy names of the Lord. And then Lord Shri Krishna says, Arjuna, practice Bhakti Yoga. Abhyasa Yoga Yuktena Chetasa Nanya Paramam Purusham Divyam Yati Parthanu Chintayan. He who meditates on me as a Supreme Personality Godhead, his mind constantly engaged in remembering me, undeviated from the path, he, O Partha, is sure to reach me. So here Krishna says Abhyas Yoga, practice Abhyas. In essence, how to pass the final exam. There are two things that Krishna says. If you want to pass the final exam, which means death, two things we have to do all through our life. First, Anusmara, remember Krishna. And second, Abhyas, the most effective method for fixing the mind on Krishna. That is chanting of Hare Krishna. So Anusmara means follow in the footsteps of Acharyas, predecessors, which means the process that they've given us for Krishna consciousness, by practicing which they became successful, is what we need to follow. And we have to do the Abhyas of the Bhakti Yoga principles. Once who does it, he becomes successful. So Lord Shri Krishna have not told how to do Anusmara or Abhyasa. Who is telling this? Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada gives the conclusion right here, if in case somebody loses internet connection and cannot proceed ahead to hear. So, but Arjuna is not yet got the answer of how to remember Krishna, isn't it? Therefore, Arjuna ponders, my dear Lord, how to cultivate your remembrance. And to answer this question, to understand Krishna understanding that Arjuna is thinking like this, it brings us to the next section, the third section rather, of this 8th chapter, where A stands for attaining the Supreme. Here Lord Shri Krishna highlights two paths to remember Krishna. One is Sat Chakra Yoga, Bhakti Yoga, second path, and finally Krishna compares the material and spiritual worlds. So let's take a look at what is Sat Chakra Yoga. Krishna explains, Arjuna, practice Sat Chakra Yoga and raise your life air to Agna Chakra. Chant Om and meditate on it. Renounce all sense gratification, which means all sense engagements, especially the sex life. And I've given you the verse number references for you to refer again. Fix mind on your heart. Like this, gradually you will be able to raise your chakra, which is also called as Kundalini Yoga. The another name for Sat Chakra Yoga is Kundalini Yoga. You'll be able to raise your Kundalini and bring it up to the top of your forehead. And like that, you can always remember. And then finally, from here, you can leave back to Godhead, like that Krishna explains. But Krishna concludes, Arjuna, it is not possible for the present day. Because how many of you can give up everything and renounce all sense gratification, means all sense activities and engagements? How many of us here can give up our education, our professional life, our family life, the comforts that we are in, and think of going to the forest? It's very, very difficult. Therefore, Lord Shri Krishna speaks about the easiest path to remember Krishna, and that is Bhakti Yoga. Bhakti Yoga, Srila Prabhupada writes in the purport, is very simple, pure, and easy to perform. How is very simple, easy to perform? Because we don't have to give up anything. We don't have to give up our sense engagements. We don't have to give up our family life or professional life. We just have to add some elements of bhakti principles. And these elements add colors to otherwise grayed out life, which means the dry and the boring life of a modern man and woman. So Srila Prabhupada gave us a simple formula for morning and evening program. And we can use the same in this context, what we are discussing, where Prabhupada said, one should get up early in the morning and chant the holy names of the Lord, read Srimad Bhagavatam, honor Krishna Prasadam, leave for your work, perform your Swadharma, which we discussed in the 2nd chapter of Bhagavad Gita. Come back in the evening, honor Krishna Prasadam, read Bhagavad Gita or Krishna book, chant the holy names of the Lord, do Kirtan with the family, and then go to take rest. And that's how easy it becomes to practice Bhakti Yoga, wherein you have not given anything. You've added such a beautiful elements of joy and colors in your otherwise life, where it becomes very easy for anyone to connect to the Lord. So, in this section of verses, there are glories of Bhakti being described by Lord Shri Krishna as follows. So, these are the 4 headings which I would describe to you all briefly. First, Bhakti brings peace. Bhakti cannot be checked. Bhakti purchases Krishna, and Bhakti liberates us. So let's see how Bhakti brings peace. Very interesting. Now, there is someone called as karmis, right? Now, karmis, their goal of life is enjoyment, sense enjoyment. And we already saw in the 5th chapter, Ye hi samsparshaja bhoga dukh yoniya evate. Krishna says, Arjuna, you are correct. Sense gratification is a miserable experience. So thus, karmis always remain frustrated. Talk about jnanis. Jnanis, because they become frustrated from material life, they want moksha. They want to become one with the Lord. And for this, they have to really work very hard. Because they don't believe in God. Because they want to become God. They don't depend on the mercy of the Lord. They entirely depend on their own strength because they think they are the Lord. Third, yogis. They perform all kind of tapasyas to attain mystic siddhis. And then they end up into a competition. If some other yogi, Siddha Baba, becomes more powerful than them, then again they end up in conflict and competition and whatnot. Like this, they always remain disturbed. And bhakta or a devotee has no anxiety. Why? Because he wants to serve and please Krishna. If he has something, he can serve with that. If he doesn't have anything, patram pushpam phalam toyam. Krishna doesn't want anything. Krishna says, with devotion, you give it to me, I'm happy. Therefore, the devotee of the Lord is happy in the future, is happy in the present. Therefore, bhakti brings peace. Bhakti cannot be checked. In Jnana Ashtanga Yoga, advancement is dependent on certain qualities like knowledge and renunciation. In other words, to practice Jnana Ashtanga Yoga, there are certain prerequisites that we need to fulfill. First, we require certain amount of knowledge and also the path of renunciation or sannyas, the external renunciation. For bhakti, even our Jagannath Swami, only a 9-year-old boy, can also practice. Sai Saswat, the 6-year-old boy, can practice. Or Vrinda, who is almost 2.5-year-old, if I'm correct, she can practice. Or maybe if any one of you 80-year plus can practice from any kind of gender, from any kind, there are only two kinds of gender, by the way, from any kind of religion or nationality. No prerequisite. Yes, there is one prerequisite. There is only not prerequisite, there is only one condition, and that is sincere desire to advance. That's the only thing. And that's how a person can stay progressive. Bhakti, another advantage, purchases Krishna. And Lord Shri Krishna explains how. Ananya Bhakti. Ananya means without anything added, without deviation, is Ananya Bhakti. Somebody renders Ananya Bhakti, and Satata means every day. So when we take a vow to chant the holy names of the Lord every day, read and hear every day without deviation, Krishna is very pleased by this Satatam Bhakti. And finally Krishna says, Sulabha is I'm very easy to obtain. And therefore Krishna says, Bhakti purchases me. You all see a very beautiful picture behind me? This is the picture of Dwarka. Can anyone tell what is happening right now? There is a lady holding a fan. That lady is Rukmani, fanning someone. And someone, if you look behind me, I don't know how do you look behind me, seems to be washing the feet of a man who's sitting on a bed. Who is washing the feet and whose feet is being washed? As you all know, correct? Many of you have already written. It is Krishna, Aham Sarvasya Prabhaho, Mathas Sarvam Pravartate. That Supreme Personality of Godhead is washing the feet of whom? A beggar, a pauper, by the name of Sudama, the Brahmana. That Supreme Personality of Godhead has become a servant of Sudama, the Vipra, the poor person. Therefore, what was the qualification of that Sudama? He was Ananya Bhakta of Lord Shri Krishna. That's the point. Bhakti purchases Krishna. And finally, Bhakti liberates us. When one practices Bhakti, person ultimately attains perfection of life. And he escapes the material world and goes back to Godhead. You see another beautiful picture behind me? Does anyone know who is this person along with Vishnu Duta sitting in Vaikuntha Airlines, heading back to Vaikuntha? Who is this person with the folded hands? Is Dhruva Maharaj. 4th canto Srimad Bhagavatam describes. So Bhakti liberates us. The question comes, why Krishna is saying escape the material world? What is the problem with material world? I like it a lot. Before I met ISKCON Walas or Hare Krishna Walas, I never thought there is any life existing outside of planet Earth. Now you're telling me there is a whole separate creation called a spiritual world. What's the problem? Well, with this material world, there is not a problem. There is a big problem. What is that problem? Lord Shri Krishna says. 8th chapter, 15th verse. Mamupetya punarjanma dukhalayam shashvatam napnuvanti mahatmana samsiddhim paramam gataha. Here Brahmaji says, Krishna says, Mam upetya, ma means I, upetya, who attains me? Punarjanma. He does not have to take birth again. Where? Dukhalayam. Krishna is rubber stamping this material world as Dukhalayam. Is a place of misery. Ashashvatam, temporary. Napnuvanti Mahatmana Samsiddhim Paramam Gatha. Once this Mahatma attains my abode, he never ever comes back to this world. Not only this, Lord Shri Krishna says further, this place is the place of misery. Abrahma Bhuvana Luka. From the topmost planet of Brahma, Punar Avartana Arjuna is a place of rebirth. Mamupetya Kaunteya. Once again, Krishna says, Mamupetya, one who attains to my nature, Punarjanmana Vidyate, never has to take birth again to this world. So some of you wonder, why did Krishna create such a messy place itself? What was the need of it? This is a concept that we had discussed in our Why Do Bad Things Happen to Good People? So here I'm going to just very quickly skim through this subject matter. Those who would like to have the recordings, they can request the host. They'll give you the whole playlist of the Gita Wisdom program. So why did Krishna create it? Imagine you are a city planner. You're asked to design a city. What are the possible things you would want to have it in a city? Obviously college, theaters, recreation centers, playgrounds and whatnot. But the matter of fact is, despite all these things, in every society there are certain elements who do not follow the rules and regulations. And such elements required a place called as prison house. So criminal elements in society forces the authority to create prisons. They are forced to create prisons. So when somebody does a criminal activity, the authorities only have two options: jail them or else shoot them. But shooting them is not the best option. Jailing them at least gives them an opportunity to purify them and to punish them for their misdeeds. However, the prison house is not meant to be an extra comfortable place. Living house, the prison house is meant to provide the bare basic necessity where a prisoner has a place to live and a food to eat and attend to the nature's call like that. If the prison house was made too comfortable, a place like a five-star hotel with an incredible dining facility with a private waiter waiting for you to give him an order day in, day out, and have a great accommodation and living facility, I guess everyone would have shifted to prison house, isn't it? Why to work so hard? Therefore, Lord Shri Krishna explains this material world is compared to prison house. What is the need of the prison house? To punish for the act the person have done and also to purify. How does every living entity in this world is getting punishment? Everyone is given a punishment in the form of birth, death, old age and disease. And the jailer of this world, of this prison house, is Durga, who is known for holding Trishul in her hand. And the three ends of Trishul, she pokes every living entity with Adi Atmika, means the suffering because of one's own mind and the body. Adi Bhautika, other living entities, like coronavirus. Right now, everyone is experiencing Adi Bhautika Kalesh and Adi Daivika Kalesh by nature, the floods and whatnot. So like this, every living entity in this world is being punished. So what is the need for prison house? The need for prison house is to give a punishment and to purify. Please tell me yes or no if you have seen people having this kind of diseases. Have you seen people being proud, angry, greedy, envious, lusty? Yes or no? Because see, we all have that experience, right? We have found people having this kind of a disease. So we are here to get purified of this mentality. Now my question to all of you: how many of you have found these problems, these diseases within yourself? If you acknowledge you have any of these, so you know for sure why we are here in this material world called as prison house. And what happens when a prisoner is sent behind the prison? His dress is changed, and therefore it is described in scriptures. The material nature gives us 8.4 million bodies of the costumes to choose, where 9 lakh living entities are found in water, 20 lakh are non-moving, and like that the whole number. I'm not going to go in details as we have discussed in the past. Some of you may wonder, Prabhu, where is the prison wall? Where are the chains? I feel like a free bird. Well, this is a prison without the walls. How are we bound in this prison house? Krishna explains by the three modes of material nature. Like the seventh chapter we just in the introduction spoke today, every living entity is bound by the modes of material nature, covered by it. Three chains of sattva, guna, rajagun, and tamogun. And that is why, and what is the situation that we have? We have forced Krishna to create this world for those people who do not follow or obey the orders of the Lord, or those who became envious of the Lord are sent in this world, and we cannot complain to it or for it. Rather, understand the reality, reform ourselves, and let's go back to Godhead, our real world. So Krishna ahead in verse number 20 and 21 introduces spiritual world, and Krishna says, "Hey Arjuna, spiritual world is eternal, free from birth and death. Spiritual world is infallible, never gets destroyed, full of unlimited bliss, and it fulfills all desires. It is all attractive. It is unmanifest and transcendental, means it is not that it appeared and destroyed at a particular time. And finally, it is a supreme destination and it's a place of no return. In other words, Lord Shri Krishna very clearly is rubber stamping this material world where you and I and all of us live as a place of suffering. And Krishna is establishing or is requesting or is educating us through Arjuna to return back to the eternal, all blissful abode called as spiritual world. When Arjuna heard this, and with which we come to the last section of chapter 8, Arjuna pondered. Arjuna thought, my dear Lord, bhaktas or bhakta yogis return to Godhead. What about karma yogis and jnana yogis? How do they return back to Godhead? And ashtanga yogis for that reason. So here in this section, Krishna would be describing various spiritual practices. In other words, here in this concluding chapter where D for devotion, verse number 20 to 28, various spiritual practices are discussed in this section, where Krishna concludes by outlining the most effective yoga process to attain the supreme is Bhakti Yoga. Bhakti Yoga is the path of active service to the Lord in a mood of devotion, wherein it is described as the topmost spiritual path. Think about it. Today we are living in an age full of rampant distractions and temptations, which is coupled along with individual weakness, disinterest in spiritual life. A highly practical and powerful spiritual progress is indeed required for the people of current day. Through Bhakti Yoga, anyone can experience an incredible, fulfilling spiritual connection in a very short time. Thus, Krishna explains, one is able to saturate their consciousness with God consciousness, then they will attain to the supreme destination, eternal and free from all kind of miseries in this very lifetime. So in this section, Lord Shri Krishna explains how the different people or yoga practitioners attain to the supreme abode. So Krishna explains they have to follow a mechanical process where a particular time is being chosen, and at that time, which is called as muhurta, the most auspicious time, is when they decide to quit the body. But Krishna says, Arjuna, that bhaktas or devotees don't need to practice a mechanical process. They are always ready to perform or to give the final exam. They're not the people with whom you have to negotiate and they give you the date. They are the karma yogi, jnana yogi, ashtanga yogis. But bhaktas, the bhakta yogis, they're above all kind of mechanical process and they're always ready. And devotional service encompasses everything. So thus, Krishna explains the person who accepts Bhakti Marga is not bereft of the results derived from studying scriptures, performing sacrifice, undergoing tapasya, or giving charity. Rather, simply by performing devotional service, one attains to everything. And finally, he attains to the abode of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. With this, we come to the conclusion of our 8th chapter, where we saw following things. This chapter opens with Arjuna's questions, and Lord Shri Krishna answers those questions, leaving behind the subject matter of death, which Krishna explains from the 5th and 8th verse, where we had discussed the story of Mr. Prakash, that how he saw the Yamdutas and Vishnudutas, and he understood the truth of life. Krishna explains what you remember at the end of your life is what you attain in the next life. Therefore, one should prepare oneself for this exam from today onward, because how we cultivate our consciousness, to what we develop our attachment, to that degree, or to that, this is what we remember at the end of life. Finally, Krishna explains the next section, attaining the supreme. How do we remember Lord? Krishna said, Chakra Yoga, Kundalini Yoga. Then Krishna says, very difficult for this age. Rather do Bhakti Yoga. Bhakti Yoga means active engagement of the senses. Is very simple and sublime, and one can easily approach it. And finally, among bhaktas, Ashtanga yogas, and Jnana yogis, the most easy and sublime path to return back to Godhead is devotion. A Bhakta yogi is not deprived of the benefits of what Ashtanga yogis or Jnana yogis achieve through their practice. They have been provided with all the advantages, and ultimately, being in your situation, being in your position, being a householder, be a professional, be a student, just remember Krishna. Try to follow the principles of Bhakti Yoga, like following the four regulative principles, chanting the holy names of the Lord. And when we continue living our life like this, finally, at the end of the day, when we sleep forever in this body, and when we'll open our eyes again, we'll find ourselves standing at the doors of Goloka Vrindavan, where Lord Shri Krishna, Basuri Wala, playing his flute, will be standing to receive us with all along with his gopas and gopis. With eyes filled with tears, Krishna will be waiting for us at the door to welcome us. Finally, the living entity has returned back to Godhead, and Krishna would personally hold the hands of each one of us and take us on a tour of the whole Vrindavan Dham, introduce us to Mother Yashoda, introduce us to Mother Rohini, Balaram, introduce us to Govardhan, where we'll get to meet Yamuna Devi, Vrinda Devi, Shri Radharani, and everyone. And that's the entry to the eternal life full of joy and bliss. But that reality begins with making certain decisions in the present today, making a commitment to take to the spiritual life of Bhakti Yoga, and finally we will attain this perfection at the end. Thank you so much for joining us for today evening Bhakti Yoga, the Bhagavad Gita program, Bhagavad Gita class. Sincerely grateful to all of you for joining us. We conclude with this for today. Hare Krishna, Srila Prabhupada ki Jai.
Hare Krishna, thank you so much, Prabhuji, for this session. Although the acronym was dead, but the entire session was very lively. And at the end, when you were giving the description, it was like that we are actually trying to enter. So I was feeling that everything was in front of my eyes. I don't know how, what is my situation, whether I'll be able to attain or not. But the way you were describing it, it was very beautiful and very lively. Prabhuji, we are already having two hands up, two, three hands up. In between, there were two questions which were related to the session you were taking. Rashmi ji, are you there online? You have asked a question. So when Prabhuji was talking about the verse Yam Yam Vapi, so Mataji that time put the question that what if the person's deeds are very good, but he is not able to remember Krishna?
Well, deeds are very good means is karma, is pious karma. You'll have to take birth again to reap the results of your pious karma. If you have never remembered Krishna, how do you expect to remember Krishna? Krishna nowhere says in Bhagavad Gita, you perform pious deeds and you will remember me at the end of life. Krishna says, you remember me, then you will remember me at the end of life. There is a difference between pious deeds and bhakti deeds or bhakti yoga.
Thank you, Prabhuji. And Prabhuji, related to the last verse of this chapter 8.28, Samhita ji has put this question. Samhita ji, are you there online? Would you like to come online? She was asking that although Arjuna has already listened everything from Krishna, that how to attain the supreme. So after that, when Pandavas die, why everyone except Yudhishthira go to hell instead of Krishna Loka?
Well, that was just a temporary stop, which Mahabharata talks about it. If you read Srimad Bhagavatam says all the Pandavas are eternal Parshad and associates of the Lord. Mahabharata was written by Srila Vyasadeva with an understanding of encouraging people in Purushartha, Dharma, Artha, Kama, Moksha. Mahabharata does not speak only about the spiritual world. It doesn't speak about the spiritual world itself. Because the objective of the book, the conclusion was to be drawn to encourage people to follow dharma. Therefore, after writing this vast literature, Mahabharata, Vyasa was frustrated. क्या किया मैंने 1 लाख श्लोक लिख दिए अभी भी आनंद नहीं है. Like this, Vyasa was frustrated, and then Admani appears to Vyasadeva and then instructs him, tells the mistake of Vyasa that you have only encouraged people to follow dharma so that they can fulfill their karma. You have not shown them the way to go back to Godhead. Then Vyasa said, my dear Gurudev, I did so that I can encourage people at least to follow dharma. Then Admani said, no, you should tell the truth as it is. Do not interfere in the absolute truth. Tell the truth that Krishna exists, spiritual world exists. And therefore, Srila Vyasadeva, on the instruction of Narad Muni, compiled Srimad Bhagavatam, which speaks exclusively about Bhakti, Bhakta, and Bhagavan. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhuji, for explaining fundamental doubt. Now, I request Vaibhavanji, you have raised your hands. So, would you like to ask question?
Yeah,
Yes,
thank you,
please.
Madan Sundar. It was wonderful to hear from you.
Yes,
And
Vaibhav Prabhu.
I would like to ask that this prison analogy. So generally, we say that material world is like a prison. But why would Krishna make something kind of a prison if he wishes us to love him unconditionally, or love is not forced? We say yes. So we put somebody in a prison, that is an indication that already it's a punishment. And if Krishna wants us to love him, without any force, then why to put us in a prison kind of a place?
See, for us to love Krishna is not Krishna's need. For us to love Krishna is our need. Krishna is Swarat, fully independent. He is not dependent on our love to him. Chintamani prakara satma shukalpa vriksha lakshavrateshu surabhi abhipalayantam lakshmi sahastra shata sambhrama sevyamanam govindamadi purusham tamaham bhajami. Lakshmi sahastra shata sambhrama sevyamanam. That Govinda is being served by hundreds and thousands and millions of Lakshmis. I mean, what is our need for Govinda? Nothing. We are like a spark separated from the fire. We are like a drop of ocean water separated from the ocean. If a drop of ocean water is separate from the ocean, it can very easily dry up. Yes or no? If that the drop of water wants to sustain, it's the need of the ocean drop water, the drop for to be with the ocean, to be under the shelter of ocean. Similarly, the spark for it to continue to burn is a need for it to be in the touch association of the fire, not to be separated. When we are separated, there is only suffering and we hardly last forever. So we are here because of our mistakes. And Krishna have created this world for us to fulfill our desires and ultimately understand that this is not the place where we can find happiness. So this is an analogy to help us understand that this is not the place where you should look for happiness. Krishna says, Dukhalayam ashashvatam. And the happiness that a person is looking in this world is through the sense engagements, through sense gratification, which Krishna has already established in the 5th chapter, 22nd verse. Any kind of sense gratification only gives birth to misery. So, Krishna to help us, to remind us of our eternal position. Look how kind, loving, and compassionate He is, that He comes with us life after life as Paramatma. Time and again, He descends to remind us. Time and again, He sends His pure devotees in this world to remind us. And He always has sent Vedic scriptures for us to study and understand who the Lord is. To know the Lord, to understand the Lord is not Lord's need. It is my need, is our need. Krishna is always blissful whenever you look at Him. He's always holding the flute in a three bending form. That is what he does in the spiritual world. It is not that Krishna is frustrated because you and I are here, thinking that, oh, mera dost chhod ke chala gaya. But Krishna is indeed so happy when he sees us back, when we return back. So ultimately, it is for our own good to understand we are like a drowning person in an ocean. For us to cross this ocean, to go to the land, we need to get onto the boat, take a guidance of an expert boatman, and cross over this ocean of suffering to go to the place which Krishna himself describes is a place of no suffering, Vaikuntha, place of only bliss and happiness. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Prabhuji, I can't see any other question in the chat box right now, and now only two hands are up. One is from Adi Lakshman and another is from Jagannath Prabhu.
Yes, whoever, they both are the same age, whoever wants to go first.
Yes, Jagannath Prabhu, you want to ask a question?
Hare Krishna Mataji. Hare Krishna Prabhuji. Prabhuji, I have a doubt of yesterday's session that you told the four types of people who come to temple to worship Lord. In that, the people who have desires, please Lord, please accept this and please fulfill my wish. I want this, I want that. So does Krishna also accept them and also give them the higher position which is given to a pure devotee?
No. Ye yatha mam prapadyante tams tatheva bhajamiham. Fourth chapter, Krishna says, as you surrender, so shall I reciprocate. When a person goes with a desire for his own needs, Krishna may award him directly or indirectly. So Karmi goes with a desire for his own gratification. Jnani wants moksha, yogi wants siddhi. So Krishna reciprocate accordingly. Not that Krishna brings everyone to the level of pure devotee. All right?
But Krishna accept them
Oh,
as
yes.
their devotee.
No, they are not devotees. When they are not asking for devotion, why would Krishna call them devotees? Devotees are devotees. Devotees means ones who want to serve the Lord. So they are, Krishna says, that these are the pious being who comes to him, and gradually they will grow and mature to the stages ahead and then come to the platform of bhakta or devotion if they continue to progress that way. And that may take many lifetimes. Bahunam janmanamante jnanavan mam prapadyate. It may take many, many lifetimes for that. So they are not devotees. Devotees is one who serves Krishna, who doesn't ask for Krishna. So we are tiny devotees, semi devotees, demi devotees, okay? The definition of devotee is given by Rupa Goswami in Nectar Devotion. Anya vilashita shunyam jnana karamadi anavritam anukulyena krishnanu shilanam bhaktiruttama. That's a different subject matter, but because you asked about devotee, so it's a big, big thing to be a devotee. It's a big thing. All right. So we are whatever we are. Krishna only knows who we are, what we are. If it makes us feel good, we can call ourselves as devotees, no problem. Okay. Ultimately, Krishna reciprocates as we approach him. Ye yatamam prapadante tam stateva bhajamya. Thank you for your wonderful question, Jagannath. All right.
Okay,
Thank you,
Prabhuji, thank you.
Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna.
Prabhuji, there is one clarification from Akriti's side, and she is asking that Tulsi Maharani ji, is she also being considered under that 8.4 lakh species, or
Is she, you said she is a lawyer, right?
Yes, Prabhuji.
Yeah, my goodness. Such kind of tricky questions. All this kind of thing. Never thought of it. I mean, a better chant Hare Krishna, think about Krishna to think about Tulsi Mani is 8.4 million. Well, the fact is, because Tulsi Mani have taken a form of a plant. So indeed, she is part of this 8.4 million species as much as a human being. A human being later on becomes a pure devotee, isn't it? That's the whole thing. All right.
Prabhuji, I have a doubt.
Thank you, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna. Yes, Adi Lakshman. Your name is
Prabhuji.
Adi Lakshman. Means you are the original Lakshman, huh? Interesting. So you should be Adi Lakshman Das, the servant of original Lakshman, not Adi Lakshman.
Prabhuji, my grandfather's name is Lakshman Iyer, so I because of that I gave the name Lakshman.
Perfect. So if somebody asks you next time, what's your name? You say, my name is Adi Lakshman Das. Okay, I'm the servant of the original Lakshman, the younger brother of Lord Rama. Yes, Adi Lakshman Das.
Prabhuji, Prabhuji, I have a doubt that why did the Krishna created the souls? If he has created the souls, then he should not create the material world, and he will not have created the Brahma, Vishnu, and all.
Well, Krishna created so I can have a wonderful association of Adi Lakshman. Because spiritual world is so huge, I would have never found Adi Lakshman Das there. So that in this world we could meet, that's the reason Krishna created. All right, Adi Lakshman Das?
Prabhuji, I have one more doubt.
Okay. Go ahead.
Prabhuji, you said that karma, by doing karma, only doing the pious activities, we can go only to Swarglok and all, and we could not reach the Vaikunta and all. So we only reach to Devlok, or there is other loks like Nagalok and all. No. So there also the souls are accommodated.
No, sorry, I didn't get it clearly. Mother Dipasha, did you hear it? You can summarize.
So Prabhuji is asking that in those different lokas or higher lokas, higher planets, there they have what we can say accommodation provision for souls.
Well, this whole 8.4 million species are spread over the 14 planetary systems. Okay. So somebody
Yes.
does pious deeds and qualifies. So pious deeds is a visa to go to higher planetary systems. Impious deeds is a visa to become a four-legged animal or a plant or a tree to stand naked all your life in the next birth, either in this planet or in different planetary systems like that. Okay.
Prabhuji, today I visited this Dhanvantri temple.
What said Adi Lakshman?
Prabhuji, today I visited Dhanvantari temple.
Okay. Dhanvantri temple. You shifted to Dhanvantri temple.
No,
You
I
visited.
went to the
Oh,
visited.
wonderful, wonderful. Jai Dhanvantri Maharaj ki. Wonderful, wonderful. All
And
right.
in every year in Kerala, some temples it is like they will give the sandal paste over the idol, and it is they will make the
So
Dashavatar.
first of all, they are not idols. Idols means putla. They are deities. Okay. So never call deities
Yes.
as idols.
And today it was Malsavatar.
Yes. So you're clear now. They're not idols. They're what?
That is
Deities, yeah.
Deities. So henceforward, don't call them idols. Idols is an insult. Call deities. Okay,
okay, Prabhuji.
Swati Lakshman, thank you. Thank
Thank you,
you,
Prabhuji.
everyone.
It was a nice class.
Thank you, Adi Lakshman, to be associated with you. Wonderful.
Thank you,
Anything
Prabhuji.
else?
I can see
No,
only
Prabhuji.
Sai Shashwat. Sai Shashwat is still raising his hand.
Oh
Sai
my
Shashwat, yeah.
goodness.
What is your
That's
question?
gonna be a complicated question now.
Yeah, please unmute yourself, Sai Shashwat.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji. I have two questions, but I want to say my real name is Sai Shashwat Das.
Jai, I am also from Bengal, Madan Sundar Das. Hey, where are you?
From Odisha.
Yes, what's that, Sai Shashwat?
Das.
Das. Yes, Mr. Das. You're saying something?
That's it, Sai Shashwat? You want to say this only?
Okay.
Thank you so much, Sai Shashwat.
So we have Jagannath Das, we have Adi Lakshman Das, we have Sai Shashwat Das. So good, huh? There is a good training going on for all our kids now. All have accepted to be Das. So already the ahankar is gone, the ego is gone. Good. That's a good success of Gita program. All right. Hare Krishna, thank you all for joining for today evening. And just generally, I request, may I know if you may just switch on your camera if you're comfortable, so I know who are the students actually who join these programs. I see another young girl, Rajita, I believe. She asked
Yes,
question.
Prabhuji, it's me, Rajita.
Where are you from?
I am from Hyderabad.
Okay. Hey, Raman, Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji, how are you?
Oh, good. Long time no see. Didn't see you from the last 24 hours, I guess.
Prabhuji, I'm always there. In fact, I was listening to the recording of yesterday's session also. So I
Okay.
make sure that even if I, miss 5-10 minutes, so I can go back to the recording.
So we are exactly meeting after 24 hours, huh? Yesterday we
Yes,
ended.
we are waiting. Yes.
So we have Srinachi, Tarun, okay, Tarun. We have Mother Kamalika, Prakash ji, oh, Ranjita, Hare Krishna, and Swati. Then, okay, I can't see anyone else. So fine. All right. Thank you, Hare Krishna.
Prabhuji, I have one question. If you are getting late, I can ask tomorrow.
Yes, we should have it tomorrow, okay?
Okay, no problem. Thank you, Prabhuji.
Oh, we have Sudhir also. Yes, Sudhir, Hare Krishna. All right, Hare Krishna. And Mother Gita, I just saw
Yes,
her.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
I missed yesterday's session. I'll think
Yeah,
yesterday's session.
so I guess the recording is there. Otherwise, you can go to
Yeah,
the
I'll go
student
through.
section.
Yeah, I'll
Yeah.
go through the
Or it's
recording.
probably posted on the WhatsApp group also. You can get
I'm
access.
enjoying the classes immensely.
Oh, thank you. I'm enjoying all of your association. Wonderful to meet all of you.
Thank you, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you so much, Prabhuji. Thank you so much to all devotees, friends, all uncles, auntie ji.
Hare Krishna, Mataji. Hare Krishna.
Thank you so much. Please keep on sharing your feedback. And if you are having any technical glitches, then please let us know. We'll try to rectify as soon as possible. Hare Krishna. Thanks a lot.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.